YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. For those that are longtime subscribers and supporting the work that I do, I see you. Thank you. It means a lot. For those that are new here, welcome. Have a look around. If you like what you see, maybe hit the subscribe button. And if you've got any questions or you want to leave a comment, man, please do so. I love to interact with the community, with people that are resonating the same frequency and the same vibe that I'm putting out there. So this video is a follow-on to my last video in relation to the eclipse, and that was all about predicting types of geological, potential geological shifts with regards to the eclipse. But this one, I was inspired to create this video because when we want to look at personal astrology, natal astrology, birth chart astrology, we want to take into so many different things into consideration when it comes to prediction. What's going to happen? What phase or cycle is someone going through? If we just look at what's happening in the sky above us, the cosmic clock, then we are going to be very occasionally on the money, but most often hit and miss. And the reason for that is because if the potential isn't indicated within someone's conscious unfoldment or their evolution of their consciousness, as indicated by their different aspects within different charts, astrological charts, then the eclipse isn't really going to be anything significant. And that's why some people can have like a full moon experience where it's like, well, everyone's going to shit around me and the world's gone chaotic. And I'm like, well, nothing's happened. And other people can have like, build up to a full moon and they're just losing the plot. They're out of their mind. They're having out of body experiences. Their dreams are going wild and everyone's different, right? So when I've been doing my research for my clients this week, been really looking into a lot of the different depths to their personal phases and cycles that they're going through, and then looking at the transits, such as this big eclipse energy that we're right in the middle of between the solar and the lunar eclipse. Now, when I was doing this, I thought, well, how can I convey to you guys, how can I use an example to help you understand how to layer all these different aspects of astrology, and why that I believe it's really important to seek out a professional when it comes to astrology, rather than just taking, those people that are on the, social media and they're spouting all of the information in relationship to only the transiting energy in the sky and only what's happening at the sky clock. And, as a professional, as a predictive and evolutionary astrologer, there's so much more to it than just what's happening above us. So I thought, well, how can I use an example to help you guys understand the different layers of complexity, but in a way that you go, okay, that makes sense, so that you can apply it to your own life, or you can at least use it to seek out professional for you, for your spiritual guidance, your life guidance. And when I was looking into, different celebrities or different types of people that we could use as an example, I was like, well, why not use Mr. Big Ears himself? Hello, mommy. Soon to be king of the free world. Charles. And when I did, I was thinking to myself, why would Charles, right, going to become the head of the monarch, the monarch, which his mummy was for such a long time, who are notorious for utilizing astrology and the subconscious and symbolic aspect of astrology, and also known in past to have famous astrologers working alongside them. Why would they choose to coronate a king on an eclipse, a lunar eclipse in Scorpio, a south node lunar eclipse in Scorpio? I was thinking, that's weird. Like, that's a strange astrological alignment. So either they've gotten pretty dud advice, or, excuse my little light thing here is flickering, or they know something that we don't. So I started to look into Prince Charles's chart, and then by proxy, I also started looking into Prince William's chart, because if kingy boy Charlesy, big ears, abdicates, I think that's the word you use, the throne, or dies on the throne, like, who does it go to? Well, William's next in line. So, and looking at their charts in relation to this eclipse, I was like, oh, okay, wow, this is pretty intense energy. And I thought these charts would be a good example for you guys, especially those out there that are interested in this stuff and that want to look beyond just the superficial new age fucking astrological propaganda that's out there. And it's all about, oh, this eclipse is about letting go. And it's deep karmic letting go because it's Scorpio. And you're going to have to move through some heavy stuff, right? Which, yes, there's an aspect of truth to that, but it can't be just a blanket sort of, this is what's going to happen, because most people are out there going, well, how do I approach that? So my point of this video is that it's not just as simple as taking what's happening in the clock and applying it. We're complex beings. There are many different aspects and layers to our experience of consciousness, our nature, our makeup, our characteristics, all the different energetic bodies that we have. The physical is but one. We also have an emotional body, a mental body, a spiritual body. We operate and live on different aspects and planes of reality as well. So you've got to take all those things into consideration. That's what this video is about. So before we get into the royals and the coronation and my predictions about that, let's take a look at what I'm actually talking about with regards to my own chart here. This is my birth chart. For those out there that want to do some sort of astro magic on me because they know my alignments, this is it. I was born on 25th of August, 1978. It was a Friday. And I was born at 12:35 p.m. in Frankston, Victoria. Sagittarius rising. I'm a Virgo, Sagittarian Virgo as well, because my Virgo sun is in the 9th house. Sun Saturn conjunct as well. And my moon is in Taurus. And it's in the 6th house. Some systems it's in the 5th house, but this system is in the 6th house. So this is what I like to call your energetic blueprint, and it's the potential. It's the potential for the unfoldment or the evolution of your soul experience in the physical life. It has a lot of information about where you've come from and where you're going to and the way to get there as a soul. Like, what are we doing here? How are we evolving? What are my strengths, my weaknesses, my challenges, and all of those types of things? So when it comes to looking at prediction, if I just go and look at the transits, what's happening in the sky now, here's the moon in Libra. It's moving over my Mars at the moment. The sun is about, close to the cusp of my 5th, 6th house. It's in Taurus. It's in my 5th house. But this is just what's happening in the sky in relation to my birth chart. What I want to do before I even get to that point is I want to look at a chart that is called a progressed chart. Secondary progressed chart. What does that mean? It means that we take the potential out of 1978, when I was born, and we move it into 2023. And the way to do that is an ancient timing technique using a day for a year. So what I'm actually looking at in the outer ring here is I'm looking at the sky, right, on my 45th day of life. And what we've done is we've progressed the horoscope in time using a day for a year. So every day after you were born, if we would look at the chart, we would have then a year's worth of astrological information, because this progression is this releasing of this potential, and it does so through this progressed thing. So if you were to fast forward from the day you were born to 90 days after you were born, you would have 90 years worth of astrological data specific to you and you alone, because it's your chart being progressed. Right, this is my chart being progressed. So in that chart, I have the sun conjunct my Pluto at the moment. So big, powerful alignment. There's a lot of transformation going on for me, a lot of death and rebirth when it comes to my self-image. May even be becoming a father again for the 4th time much later in life as well. So that's going to tie into this sun Pluto conjunction. Now, why would we use a day for a year? Well, it's really simple if you think about it. In one day is the whole symbolic aspect of a year. What do I mean by that? Well, in the morning when the sun rises, let's say it's equinox time, the sun rises at 6 a.m. That's equivalent to spring. When we get to midday at 12 p.m., right, we're equivalent to summer. So 12 p.m. is a lot like summer. And then when we get to 6 p.m., the sun is setting. That's a lot like fall or autumn. And then when we get to 12 a.m., right, the sun would be then in the middle of the night. That's a lot like winter. So within the cycle of one day, symbolically, is really the whole season of the whole year. So there's a technique where you look at the progression of the planets based in relation to one day of time preceding or progressing from your birth time. And now we have computers to do this, so it's just a matter of flicking a button to bring up that chart. And you can have a lot of information about that chart and the planets and their location in relation to the birth chart, but also in relation to themselves, which can help to understand your personal phases and cycles of life. In particular, I like to look at the relationship between the sun and the moon in that progress chart, because this is showing us the lunar phase that you're going through in life. And just like every month, the moon goes new, then first quarter, full, third quarter, and then back to new. Every month, the moon's going through these cycles. With our progress chart, that cycle takes, 28 to 30 years to go through that sort of phase. So at the moment for me, I'm in a first quarter moon phase. So my moon now is in the first house in Capricorn, and it's beginning to apply to a square to the progressed sun, meaning that on 45 days after I was born, I was going through in the sky, what was happening was a first quarter phase of moon. So the first quarter phase of a progressed phase of life is all about adjustment and change with the initiation of new development. You're still like whatever was seeded 7 years ago on that new moon starting to unfold, but this is the adjustment phase where you start to sort of change a little bit. So it's a period of change and adjustment, and I can feel that myself personally. Now, where the planets are in relation to themselves and also in relation back to the natal chart helps us to understand personal phases, cycles that someone's going through. But there's also another chart that we can look at, which is called a solar arc chart. Now, it's super similar to the progress chart, except for one thing. So let me just bring it up here. Solar arc. With the progress chart, right, the sun every day after you're born is going to move 1 degree. The moon is going to move about 2.5 degrees through your progress chart. No, sorry, not 2.5 degrees, but it's going to move through a sign in 2.5 days. So every year for your progress chart, your moon's going to move the most, next followed by Mercury, the sun, Venus. And as we get out to the outer planets, they move so slowly that you can literally, like for this example, my Pluto, when I was born, right, is at 14 degrees of Libra. My Pluto, 45 years later in my progress chart, is at 16 degrees. So in 45 days after I was born, Pluto has only moved like about 1.5 to 2 degrees. So you can't really consider within a progress chart the outer planets because they move so slowly. They're going to be in a very similar position pretty much your whole life in relation to your natal chart. So here's my Neptune. I was born with Neptune at 15 degrees Sag. My progressed Neptune is 16 degrees Sag. I was born with Uranus at 12 degrees Scorpio. My progressed Uranus is 14 degrees Scorpio. So it hasn't changed. So there's another chart that we can look at called a solar arc chart. Now with a progress chart, we're looking at the specific movement of each planet one day after birth. That's why there's different speeds that they progress at, okay? With a solar arc chart, what we do is we pin every planet to the movement of the sun. So you'll notice in this chart now, the solar arc chart, the sun is in the same position as my progressed sun because it's the same calculation. But we also tie every other planet into that same solar progression called a solar arc. We're arcing around, right, based on the movement of the sun, which means that my Saturn has progressed quite a bit. 17 degrees now, it's moved into 17 degrees of Libra. My Pluto is 28 degrees of Scorpio. My Uranus is 26 degrees of Sagittarius. So I'm almost having my solar arc Uranus over my ascendant. And my Neptune is 29 degrees of Capricorn. So what a solar arc chart allows us to do is to take the outer planets and apply them to different phases and cycles. And then we're reading them very similar as we would a transit chart in relation to, you know, what is the themes of that planet and what are the aspects are they making and how does that energy unfolding? And again, as a professional, this is information that we're using. We're building a picture. So if we just take in, if I apply now, the transits, now it's getting quite complicated. We've got this big, there's a lot, there's 4 wheels here. There's 4 different birth charts all laid on. There's a whole lot of layers here. If we look at the outer wheel, now I'm looking at what's happening in the sky. But what's happening in the sky is collective. It's cosmic. And in other words, this eclipse that's happening, 14 degrees, late 14 degrees of Scorpio on the south node, we're all having that eclipse happen to us. But based on your natal chart, your progress chart, your solar arc chart, and a lot of other things as well, which I'm not going to go into, depends on how what's happening in the sky is impacting, or if it even is at all. And that's why it's important to not just blanket, you know, take the new age, oh, there's going to be an eclipse and it's Scorpio, so it's all about death and rebirth and shedding your skin. Well, yeah, maybe for some people that theme's going to be really significant. But for others, it's not going to even be considered one little bit, because that's the nature of astrology. There has to be some channel for that energy to manifest for the individual. And the channels are through all these different layers. Right? So this is the understanding of looking at an eclipse in context to the depth of someone, their lived experience. With that being said, a little sip of the drink. Might edit this out, might not. With that being said, let's take a look at our biggie, shall we? Let's take a look at Prince Charles, Prince of Wales, Charles, For those of you that are monarch lovers, back off to another channel. No, I don't mean that with all sincerity. Fuck off. I mean, they only maintain relevance because they're ongoing sagas. You notice there's always a royal scandal. Since I can remember, which is pretty much since I was about 3, right? Because before that, can't remember much before 3. Maybe 1 or 2 I have, a couple of really distant memories. But since I can remember, there's always been a royal scandal. There's always been, let me just turn this off and speak directly to you now. There's always been a royal scandal. Think about it. How many royal scandals have there been? There's been so many, and there's another one, there's another one, there's an ongoing one. There's all. What is that? It's relevance. That's how they maintain their power, is through relevance. Ask yourself this: how has any royal scandal shaped humanity or your life or lived experience for the fucking better at all ever? It hasn't. It's just something to what? Entertain us and keep our energy focused where? On something that's irrelevant. Be giving whatever that irrelevance is energy. Where your attention goes, your energy flows, and the next thing, we've still got this bullshit monarchy going on and on and on. And what a fucking load of shit it is. So that's just my personal point of view and perspective out of the way. I'm an anarchist, not a monarchist. I'm for free will liberation. I'm for sort it out, grow the fuck up, take responsibility, mature, right? Free for all, survival of the fittest. Absolutely. Nature's way, the chaotic way. This pompous fucking bollocks, right? To which it is. It's an outdated, toxic patriarchy masquerading as a matriarchy. That's just, yeah. So that's a little rant out of the way. I could give two shits who sits on the throne. But the interesting thing is about that, the astrological aspect of what's going on, which I'm very interested in. Excuse me for 1 second while there we go. There's Prince Charles's chart. Okay, he's a Scorpio, 4th house Scorpio. He was also born on a lunar eclipse. Was he? Jeez, you'd have to really check that, but he's definitely a Sun South Node person. And the Sun South Node people are, they're often overshadowed. They've often been overshadowed. Think about it like this. His dear old mother almost outlived him. And, what I feel is happening is that she's gotten to the point where she's stayed so long in reign of power that she's left such a little tiny slither of power for little poor Charlesy, right? Which is a lot about that Sun South Node, same sign conjunction, if you want to call it that. Leo rising, very interesting. Pluto in the 1st house. Moon conjunct the North Node in the 10th house as well. So let's not go too much into the different aspects and alignments within his actual chart. I'm more talking about having a look at what's going on in those different charts for him and then applying what's going on with the eclipse to this story that's unfolding, because he's been coronated on a lunar eclipse. And that seems a little strange to me until I started looking into his charts. And then I realized, actually, that's not strange at all. Makes a lot of sense to me now. So he's progressed, secondary progress chart. Let's take a look at that first. Okay, secondary progressions. So the first thing that stood out to me instantly was he's in the balsamic phase of a progress cycle. So he's right at the very end, like right at the very end of a big cycle that doesn't really begin, the new cycle doesn't really begin until about, I think it's sometime early next year or mid next year, when the moon, well, in fact, it's actually about 9 months from now, he's going to have a progressed new moon. So he's right at the very end before this new cycle. So I find that interesting because often this phase for most people represents a time of releasing and letting go, karmic undoings and endings. It's got this sort of phase of life like we would be in, like a 12th house perfection year or a lot of Pisces energy, where it's just like karmic endings, karmic undoings, releasings, letting go, surrendering, overcoming, removing, releasing, all of that sort of stuff that we do to refinement. So that found really interesting. Is also got the moon right at 29th degree of Capricorn. So it's about to move in and have a sign shift. Just shortly after he's going through his coronation, it's going to be this shift of energy for him. And the moon being in the 6th house shows a little bit of emphasis towards the house of wellness, illness, health in particular. So it does shine a little bit of light onto that. Now, I will say this, when we're looking at health, mortality, death, those types of things, there's lots of factors, again, that we have to consider. It's not just one thing we want to look for. We want to look for a lot of things that reinforce the same message, the same story. And when I started to look through his charts, his progress chart, his arc chart, his transit chart, I was like, oh, no, okay, geez, there's that too, okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through the different things that sort of made me think, is it, let's turn this off. Is it that old tick-tock clock on the Chronos, the karmic wheel for Charles, hasn't got very long to go? And is it that he's going to have some glimmer, slither of power, rising to the king level and status, only to die on the throne or abdicate to his son. And I think that if that was a known thing, that he hasn't got much time left, or that his mortality was in question, that it would make a lot of sense to coronate him on an eclipse, to have that reinforce that same theme of like, oh, a new king. Oh, he died. Shit. Another new king. And it definitely fits in well with the chaotic times that we're entering into with regards to shock and so it plays into that whole point of relevance again. Because let's just put it like this, in this climate, socio-economic climate that we find ourselves in, if Charles is coronated king, and then we have another 20-year reign, right? Perhaps of boring fucking monarchy, like the period with the Queen, the Queen. People are just so disconnected and disenchanted by that it's not going to have relevance, regardless of whatever fucking scandal they choose to throw at us. Something's got to change. So him coming king and then dying or abdicating or whatever fits into this whole relevance. So coming back to that, keep that in mind as I talk through this. So I've got some notes. So if you see me glancing, I'm looking at my notes because there's a lot here and I have to sort of unpack it. But that was one thing that I was interested in. His moon's about to also move into 0 degrees Aquarius, which we know in the sky, Pluto is sitting at 0 degrees Aquarius, which means that it's going to put this progressed moon square his natal moon as well, which is an indicator of change. A big indicator of change, or a period of transition and change. And you could say, well, that's change. Yeah, he's becoming king. Of course, yeah. So let's just continue to unfold this story. Excuse me. When we're looking at death and transition, there's lots of factors. In a personal chart, we want to look at the 8th house of death. We want to look at the cusp of the 8th house. We want to look at the ruler of the 8th house. In this case, it's Aquarius. So that means that Saturn is the ruler. For Charles, Saturn rules his 8th house. We also want to look at the sun as an indicator of vitality. We want to look at the 4th house as an indicator of end of life. And the ruler of the 4th house, the planet's in the 4th house. He's having his nodal return, by the way, at the moment, which is very significant phase and cycle. And we also want to look at the ascendant. For death to happen, there has to be an activation of the ascendant because the ascendant is the ruler of the physical body, the vessel. So, and it's not just the ascendant, the degree of the ascendant, it's the ruling planet, it's the sign, which in this case, we're looking at the sun. It's also the planets in the 1st house. So the planets in the 8th, the planets in the 1st, the planets in the 4th, the ruler of the 8th, the ruler of the 4th, the ruler of the 1st, the aspects made to those, the degrees that are sensitive. Again, it's not just one thing. So remember that, it's a lot of things. But already we're in this phase, this ending phase, this balsamic phase of this cycle, right? This transition for him. Venus, right, also progressed into the 6th house of illness, being the ruler of the 4th house endings, or the end of life ending. You've got Jupiter, which often Jupiter is indicated in death and transition because it's the soul expanding beyond the physical. Right? It's like this soul journey that we take, which is Jupiterian themes. Jupiter is progressed into exact square pretty much with Venus, the lord of the 4th house. So it's just like, oh, there's a bit there. He's also in conjunct Pluto in the 1st. Now, in conjunct, there's a 150-degree aspect between 2 points. And it often is a point of release. So it's very karmically associated, but it's also associated a lot with end of life stuff. A lot of quincunxes happen when people pass. Jupiter quincunx Pluto, that's pretty significant. As a progression, that's pretty significant. We've got Chiron enshrined to the rising sign, the rising degree. So the ascendant, Chiron enshrined to that. We've also got Chiron in a bit of a square to the lord of the 8th house. So not by degree, but close enough, within a degree or so. Chiron, the wounded healer, health indicated as well. Mercury's retrograde in his progress chart. Mercury retrograde is opposite his Ceres in his 1st house. Now, that's just his progressions. He's also in a 4th house perfection year until November, when his birthday is. 4th house perfection year. So an 8th house perfection year, a 4th house perfection year, he's got the South Node and his Sun in the 4th house. So, there's an emphasis of those themes. So again, there's a lot to consider here. When we look at his solar arc chart, the same themes repeat again. Okay. So in his solar arc chart, we've got Pluto moving into, not quite by degree, but getting there, a conjunction with his South Node in Scorpio in the 4th house, whilst Saturn is arced, right, onto a conjunction with his Sun. Remember, Saturn's the lord of his 8th house, right? So it's like, oh, okay, Saturn, solar arc Saturn's in Scorpio in his 4th house, moving into a conjunction with his Sun, while Pluto's in his 4th house, moving in conjunction with his South Node. Well, we've also got Mars in Pisces, in conjunct the ascendant and opposite the lord of the 8th house of death. Mars happens to be the ruling planet of his Sun, vitality and health. We've also got Neptune conjunct his natal Jupiter. Transcendence of the soul, the whole sort of going beyond the limitations of the physical. Yeah, absolutely. Venus, who is the lord of his 4th house, right? The ruler of his 4th house, which is it's indicated that the 4th house has a lot to do with end of life transition. So the types of experiences and themes. Now, Venus is progressed into his 6th house of illness and health, but she's also just moved into the cusp of that 6th house via solar arc, and she is sesqui-square to Saturn, the lord of his 8th house. So, the lord of the 4th, sesqui-square, the lord of the 8th in solar arc. Again, it's a repetition of that same theme again and again and again. Chiron in opposition to his progressed and natal Pluto from his 7th house. So Chiron as well, hurt, wounding, those types of things. It goes on and it goes on. Jupiter via solar arc is in conjunct Venus and in conjunct Pluto from Pisces. So it's just, the more you look at this, the more you have to sort of wait into this whole idea of that, this person is moving into a phase that it could be the transition of his soul, the end of his life. He might not have very long to live. I would be surprised looking at all of this, that if he would be here in another year or two. I think that he's in that window. Now, when we think and take into all those things into consideration, and then we look at the transits, okay, so he's got Pluto moved into Aquarius, conjunct his progressed moon, squaring his natal moon, okay, so Pluto's death and rebirth, and it's from his what? His 6th house of health and wellness. That Pluto sets up a square to his nodal points. So it's like this big transition with regards to his karmic pathway. We've got Neptune transiting, making a trine to Chiron. Now, also, one thing I haven't mentioned is there's lots of different parts or lots, Arabic lots parts. Like we've heard of the part of fortune. It's a point within your chart where it's said to be a point of where you can express your best and get the most fortune and luck and those types of things. There is called a lot of death. And how you work that out, you take the ascendant degree and you add it to the cusp of this 8th house and you minus the moon. I know it's complex, but you end up with then a calculated point within the chart called the part of death. And his, right, Charles's part of death happens to be at 27 degrees of Gemini in his 11th house. Well, that's pretty close to his Uranus, and Uranus has progressed backwards onto the 27th degree. Neptune is squaring that 27th degree at the moment as well. And by solar arc Neptune is squaring his part of death, a lot of death. So Neptune has a lot to do with transitioning different states of consciousness. An ultimate state of transition would be the transition of consciousness out of body and into afterlife through death process. So there's another reinforcement there. Uranus is directly going to be transiting this year 3 times in opposition to his sun. Okay, so it's like big sort of transitional period of time, very liberating energy of his solar energy. And you could say that that aligns to this whole transition of his role that he's playing with regards to coronating and elevating his status to, head of state of the monarch, king. Yes, but it also could be this challenge to his sun energy. Chiron is opposite his Venus. Okay, so Chiron has transited into opposite his Venus. Remember, Venus is the lord of his 4th house, has a lot to do with end of life transition. And there's another thing is Saturn's in the 8th house of death, ruling the 8th house of death in opposition to the Saturn in his chart. So he's having a Saturn opposition as well as all this is going on, if that's not enough. So tick-tock on the karmic clock for King Charles. If this was known, if this was, and I do dare say that when it gets to these people in these levels, they know they're not silly. They're not blind to this. They're not like, oh, don't look at death and when it's going to happen. They're like, and they've probably got lifetimes already planned out when they're coming and how they're coming and who they're coming in, that whole inbreeding that happens through those royal families and things like that. So they're privy to this information. And if this was known information, it would make sense that, like, okay, well, let's coronate him on an eclipse so that we can have this sort of play out as this sort of shock and, transition and change. And where's the eclipse energy happening? But across his 10th, 4th house, this eclipse. And the eclipse on the coronation, he's having his coronation just after that. We're going to have that moon passing through Scorpio, making his junction to his sun. We're going to have Pluto in square to his nodes at that time. And we're also not too far away from Jupiter moving into a conjunction with his moon. So, he's already known to suffer a lot from fluid retention. I don't know if you knew that, but have you ever looked at pictures of Charles's hands? They're like fucking elephantitis, right? He has a lot of issues with fluid retention and his lymphatic system in his body. And that's the moon energy. Like, that's the lunar energy. So Jupiter making a conjunction to the lunar energy in his chart, it's like, wow, okay. That's an indication for vitality and fluid and phases and cycles and like that. So, that between the 17th, 25th of May this year, after this eclipse, Jupiter's going to move in and make a conjunction with his moon, squaring his, squaring Pluto in his 6th, while Mars is in his 12th house of endings and undoings, making a square and opposition to those planets at the same time, which channels all the way down through his moon and through his nodal axis as well. It's like, wow, is he going to die soon? Probably. Is it going to be this year? Maybe. If he makes it through this year, it'll be probably sometime next year. I think that Charles is going to make transition. Now, here's the thing where it gets even deeper. If you're with me still, then, and this is going over your head, don't worry about it, but you can come back and watch this video again. So if that was going to happen, right, then when we looked at little Willie, we would need to see some type of indication in Prince William's charts that said or told the same story. Why? Because two things, that's his dad, first of all, and second of all, if Prince Charles kicks the bucket, right, or, you know, gets elephantitis and expands and pops, then Prince William's got the job. Excuse me while I kiss the sky. And Prince William, let me tell you something about Prince William. Have I got his chart still, or did it? Where is it? There's only so many that store here. Let me open up for his chart. Let's click on the elevator music while that happens. This is all the words. Astro Gold, Esoteric Technologies, people at Esoteric, thank you. This software is amazing. And also your preloaded charts are so cool. Prince William, not that one. Where is he? William. Where is he? Where is he? Prince. There he is, Prince William. Okay. Interesting thing about Prince William, he was born in a solar eclipse, but eclipses come in these big, I think they're 1200 or 1600 year cycles. He was born at the very end of a cycle. So it would tell me one of two things, that when Prince William rises to power with regards to the throne, he'll either be the last king of the monarchy, or he'll be the last king of the monarchy that we know. And there'll be this revolution and whole transformation of the monarch, and maybe moving it into this new era that we're moving in. So I could see that playing out in both ways. He will either, the whole system will change completely. It has to. It's just whether it can sustain itself through that transition and stay relevant, or whether it just completely is done and the people are done. They're done with it. They're pompous, done with external rulership. I know which way I lean. And obviously, if you're watching till now, you do too. So, again, Prince William's chart, we want to see some information and evidence to suggest that this could be happening for him too. This could be an experience, right? So, with his progress chart, Prince William's progress chart, excuse me. Let me see if it's there. Yes, it is. Secondary progressions. By the way, Prince William is shortly going to have his birthday in June 21st. He was born on the solstice. He's going to move into a 7th house perfection. You'll notice that 7th house in his chart has got the sun, moon, and north node. So that solar energy is definitely going to be activated, which is sun, which is father. So Prince Charles is in a 4th house perfection year right through until November. And then there's a crossover between June and November where Prince William's having a 7th house perfection year and also lines up to this father energy. So that's not just the one thing. There's lots to go here and there's lots to dig down. But he's progressed. Sorry, that's the wrong chart I'm looking at here. Prince William directed. Prince William, I have to calculate again. Oh, bloody hell. There's his secondary progress chart. His sun's at 9 degrees, right, of Leo. Leo's the king, by the way. 9 degrees of Leo, and it's making a sextile to Mars and a sextile to Mercury. So he's in a position right now for opportunity for elevation of his solar energy, his role, his status. Definitely right in a phase where that his whole image is going to be elevated, or it has the potential. And the interesting thing about the sextile to Mars, Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, his 10th house, and his 10th house is his public reputation. So there's the sextile creates this sort of a phase of life where opportunity for that to be elevated. He's progressed lunar phase, right? So he's in the gibbous phase of this lunar phase, moving towards waxing towards full. So he's going to have a full moon in his progress chart in the next 2.5 years or so, right? So it wouldn't be surprised as we approach this phase as he's going through this culmination point where he's up status to a certain elevated point. But at the moment, his progress moon is opposite his natal moon, or moving through this period of time. Now, his natal moon is Cancer, and Cancer is the sign of his sun. So his natal moon is the ruler of his sun. His sun is his father. His sun is his father image. Solar energy is father. Lunar energy is mother. So, you know, the moon moving into this opposition to the moon in his progress chart is an interesting phase of life that he's moving through. His sun, we've mentioned that, and what it's doing in relation to his sextile. He's moving to a 7th house perfection year, which activates that solar energy. His solar arcs. Let's look at his solar arc charts. Where are we? His solar arc chart. He's got Pluto in conjunct the moon. So it's moving into, and over this next little phase of life, Pluto will in conjunct the moon, and Neptune is in conjunct the moon. So a lot of releasing, you know, death and rebirth, transition, transcendence, this lunar energy, this moon energy. He's also got solar arc Chiron conjunct the moon, which would indicate that he's going through a healing phase, but also a phase of hurt, where he's emotionally going to be a lot sensitive than normal. Okay, so he's also having solar arc Jupiter in opposite position to his Mercury, which tells me that there is some big news breakthrough, right? Some big shocking things coming to light, a shift in his perception and his awareness, and those types of energies. And he's also got Saturn in his solar arc chart moved into an opposition, 24 degrees, with his Venus Chiron conjunction. Venus Chiron's interesting with Saturn in opposition to that, because Venus Chiron is pretty much opposite his father's sun, but also Venus in William's chart is the lord of his 4th house of endings. 4th house in this indication would be around his father. His midheaven would be an indication of his mother. So again, there's another reinforcement of that energy there for him. And if we look at the eclipse, where's the eclipse happening for Prince William? But it's happening whilst he's having the south node moving across his midheaven, and he's going to have this cusp, or this polar axis between the sun in his 4th house, the moon eclipsing in his 10th house, public reputation. Again, expect the unexpected here. So there is definite themes around Prince Charles's chart to suggest that he's in a phase of life where we're dealing with a massive transition. And I don't think it's just from the status of prince to king. I think it's more than that. I think it's a lot more than that. And I think they know it. And I think that's why this is happening on this eclipse. And I think that it's going to set the stage for a transition of William to become king. I don't think that's too far away. I'd be surprised if we get to the end of next year and Charles is still king. I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than that. I really think the volatile period for this would be, you know, late May. And then we have more eclipse seasons in October and, you know, shifting of energy coming through next year. So my point of this video was this. When it comes to understanding astrological energy, it's no good just looking at what's happening in the sky. There's so much complexity to it you have to consider. And that's where a professional astrologer is worth their weight. It's worth the money you're going to pay. It's worth the time and the investment you're going to make, because we can look at all those different things and we can help you understand that. And I'll tell you right now that what I've noticed in my personal life and in my professional practice is that there's a lot of shit going on. There's a lot of chaotic energy at the moment. There's a lot of stuff coming to the surface. There's a lot of unconscious energy being liberated into consciousness. And that's fucking wild. Now, I'm all for that, because I feel like we're here to grow, we're here to evolve, we're here to change, we're here to become, you know, the best version that we can become in such an alignment that we can get to living from fucking love and heart and peace, fairness and equality and balance and all those types of things. So I'm all for this types of stuff, but I understand also for a lot of people that it can be challenging and difficult to go through huge change, and people's reluctance to let go of the familiar, the known, and the comfort zone can mean that they go through crisis, chaos. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be that way. If you need support or guidance through these types of transitions, please get in contact. On that note, I am running a course later this month it's a 4-week course, and we're going to tune you into each of the energetic centers, give you practical ways to tune into your own energy centers with meditations, visualizations, and those types of things, and all the different correspondences, and then aligning that to your natal chart and how to understand and use the planetary alignments within your chart to help unblock your energetic centers, your chakras, create some clarity, some alignment to help you stay grounded, stay centered, but also access different states of consciousness. Really important for where we're at. So on that note, appreciate you. I hope this video wasn't too intense. I am a Virgo, so I can give a lot of information. I'm going to try and edit this in a way that, it's easy to understand, but it's a complex topic because we're complex beings. We're all cut from that same cosmic cloth, but we're woven together completely different. Nice, beautiful, geometric, different patterns. And the uniqueness and diversity of the human experience is that we all get to experience from our own different point of view, and no two points of view are the same. So honor that, value that, love that, respect that, accept that. And acceptance is one of those things, that's the Lord's prayer of God, give me the strength to accept what is it? It's the courage to change the things I can change, and the strength to let go of the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, apply that to your own life at the moment. Stop giving your energy and putting it into things where it's not your responsibility. You've got no power to create change. All change is an internal game. So come back to that. Keep it really simple, stupid. Right now, keep it really simple. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to be or do something that you're not right now. Time now is to just stay aligned, stay grounded, stay centered, and stay as much as you can in your heart. And often that's through the simple experiences of life that we're able to do that. So I encourage you to live from your heart, to love a little, to give a little, pray a little, if that's your thing. Pay it forward, bank some karma, commit a random act of kindness, be the change you want to see, live from love. Thanks for watching. Peace out.